2, show my traffic on Elgin clear back in service.
Alternatively, all right, instead of saying back in service, you could just say 10-8.
10-8.
Look at that. Look at that. That'd be far more efficient. In fact,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Would I be able to say dispatch 826, show 1038, 108?
Absolutely. In fact, in most cases, oftentimes when I'm in a traffic stop, it's typically dispatch 130, latest 38, code 4, 130, 10-8.
Oh yeah, code 4 is better use here. You're right.
It primarily, the entire goal is to just ensure that other people are aware that you are no longer on said traffic stop, right? Oftentimes I'll get caught up in a traffic stop. I was on one for probably half an hour the other day, right? But for most other officers, if they're not hearing me on radio for an extended period of time, and they originally heard that I was on a traffic stop, a lot of them will pass by and make sure that I'm okay, or at least radio in and check in on me. Unfortunately, we don't have many dispatchers at the moment. That is likely to change in the near future. Obviously, at that point, dispatch would be checking in on officers throughout 38s to make sure that they're okay, not being held up. Potentially checking dash cams to monitor, whether or not something's happening to the officer. But until then, we sort of have to deal with the hand dealt to us. But that being said, like I said, traffic stops are my personal favorite, my bread and butter. If I could do one thing every day, it would absolutely be this. That being said, referencing point number 1, where it states, oh my gosh.
God damn, they were hauling it.
Yeah. Where it states prior to initiating a traffic stop, run the license and whatnot. Just remember that SOPs are for standard situations, right? They sort of give you foundation level stuff that you can sort of build upon. There isn't going to be, every situation where you're going to have the opportunity to run a plate. For example, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was on Popular Street. I saw Barrick at a nearby cross. I saw a vehicle heading from west to east on Innocence while I was on Popular. Looking at that cross, I saw a vehicle hauling ass. I immediately get over radio. I say, Barrick, you have a vehicle speeding towards you. He clocks it, right? But if Barrick wasn't there, I'd still have to put my lights and sirens on. And for context, how fast was that person going, Barrick? Wasn't it like 128 or something?
Yeah.
So,
55.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in that situation, it's not like you're going to have the opportunity to catch up to the vehicle without your lights and sirens on to then be able to run the plate before they even realize, right? But if you're sitting on the side of the road, let's say a speed trap of sorts, you catch the vehicle on your radar doing 80 in a 55. You run the plate prior to putting your lights and sirens on to obviously, number 1, identify who the registered owner is, and also make sure that the plate that you caught doing that speed matches the plate that's actually in front of you. All right, our radars can be quite finicky, and as a result of that, you always want to make sure that the vehicle that you are actually pulling over matches the radar that you are pulling them over for. And you want to make sure that you document that fast, primarily because if a vehicle is speeding past, because if you look here at the angle at which my vehicle is parked, right? If utilizing the radar in the same direction, it's going to be, the radar is going to shoot out in this direction in a straight line, which means any person passing us is going to get flagged. Not flagged, but if they're going faster than the vehicle you're pulling over, their plate and their speed is going to end up on your radar. So if you don't document that quick, it's gone. That next vehicle that passes by is going to be there. And then the person you're pulling over is going to start giving you a lip about, did you clock me? Don't fall into that trap.
Is there a lock on the radar to lock the plate and the speed?
So there is, but it is a fast lock essentially. So the way it works is, let's say the vehicle you clock doing 75. is on the radar. If a vehicle passing by at 78 goes by, it's gonna lock onto that 78 because it's faster than the 75.
And we cannot override it to just like pause the fast lock.
I'm gonna be real. I don't mess with my radar all that often, but I don't believe so. I could be wrong. Sky, Alice, I think
you
we
should
all.
be able to lock the radar, but I don't think you can anymore. 'Cause you used to be able to with
It's like broken right now.
you used to be able to, if I recall correctly, on the dashboard control tilde, and it would lock it. But again, I do not believe it does it anymore.
Yeah. So again, a little finicky. So your best course of action is to ensure that you document that quickly, as soon as you can, as soon as you reasonably can, right? Then the very next portion, once you've initiated pulling the individuals over, is radioing in, and as we mentioned before, hey you, it's me. In my case, it'd be dispatch 130, 1038 northbound Elgin, black and color 4-door sedan, occupied 3 times. Right? You want to make sure you provide as much information when it is relevant. Again, if it's occupied once, occupied twice, not necessarily the biggest deal in the world. Now, if it is a 2-seater, and let's say the passenger and driver are both masked up, that's a little suspicious. You might want to call for backup in that case. What I don't ever want to hear is that additionals are not required, okay? Because there is never, ever a situation in which having backup is to your disadvantage, right? Like, is there any situation y'all can think of in which having additional units would be worse than having just one?
If I was corrupt or committing a crime, I wouldn't want other police officers there.
Well, the hope is that nobody would be corrupt. But I'm telling you now, if someone says no additionals required, I'm probably going to show up just to have a conversation with you. Okay? Shouldn't be happening. Because again, one of the most important things that police presence alone is a massive deterrent to crime. We show up on scene, people scatter like fucking roaches. All right? If people see 2 officers at a traffic stop, the likelihood that they're going to do anything crazy is fairly slim in comparison to just seeing a single officer that they know. For example, in this Cornwood situation, right? If he got stabbed, I mean, do you think that would have happened if there was a second officer there who had the opportunity to shoot that individual? Did the person just take the opportunity to stab them just because he was alone and there was no backup? Same thing applies to traffic stops. People have gotten out of traffic stops by stabbing an officer and then fleeing. In fact, some have been robbed as a result of their original traffic stops. Okay. Here, I'm gonna be real with y'all. Point number 3 is a little tricky. Because I'm sure y'all have dealt with locals in the past. Okay? It's all going to be dependent on where y'all are at, in reference to the angle at which you need to leave your vehicle. Whether or not traffic is backing up heavily within the area. If you've pulled someone over on a freeway, oftentimes locals will come to a complete stop, and you'll eventually hit a point where locals start ramming into each other. It becomes an absolute mess. In situations like that, truthfully, merge off to the right-hand side on the breakdown lane with the individuals, and it's probably worth in that case to not have your vehicle at a 45-degree angle. But ultimately, it's going to be dependent on the situation that you're in. If you can allow traffic to continue going by, it's probably worth doing that. I do 99% of my traffic stops from the passenger side. I just don't want to deal with the fact that locals are stupid. People are stupid in general. I don't really use the term common sense no more because I really don't think it's that common. It's just sense, and a lot of people ain't got it. All right, it's rough. All right, the people you're gonna deal with on a daily basis, the excuses you're gonna hear are gonna be the dumbest shit ever, and you're gonna hear it all. For example, if if you pulled someone over for running a red light and they go, "Sorry, officer, I'm colorblind," what's your response?
Well, the light is positioned at certain differences. You
Uh-huh.
colorblind, it doesn't matter. The top one
Exactly.
is always red.
Exactly. But the first thing that popped into their mind was, well, I couldn't tell it was red there, because I'm colorblind, therefore I have an excuse. All right, someone pulls that shit with you, just know that they're starting off on the wrong foot. All right, and if they're starting off on the wrong foot at the very beginning of a traffic stop, I mean, everything when it comes to a citation comes down to officer discretion. I'm telling you now, the way I operate is very much so give and take. Right? You're honest with me. You don't sit there and make bullshit excuses. You don't tell me that, the reason you're traveling 120 is because you're low on gas, because that doesn't make sense. The faster you go, the more fuel you use, right? They tell me something that makes sense. They acknowledge where they went wrong. If they tell me they're not going to do it again, I'll probably give them a slap on the wrist, right? And that is within y'all's control as well. But don't let these people play into the whole, dumb reasoning. Don't fall into it. Y'all understand?
I understand.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I
sir.
understand,
Yes,
sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
All right. So, again, in terms of positioning, back to that, this is ideal. But, again, not every situation is going to be that way. Depends on where you're at, is the TLDR. Sometimes you'll be directly behind the person. But what you will never, ever, ever do. Anyone know what I'm about to say?
You're going to say the position the car parallel to the other car in front of you.
No.
Step in between the dead.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
step in between the two cars.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it here as an example, okay? But under no circumstances should you ever be between your vehicle and the vehicle you're pulling over, okay? Remember how I said I do a majority of my traffic stops from the passenger side? That means when I get out of this vehicle, let's assume that there isn't a vehicle right behind me. When I get out of this vehicle, I'm going around my vehicle in this direction and approaching from the passenger side, all right? And when I go back to my vehicle, oftentimes if I'm running information, I'll jump into the passenger seat. But upon concluding the traffic stop, I will go all the way around and then back into my vehicle. But I will not ever, under any circumstances, stand here to have my legs amputated when some idiot decides to slam into my car. Is that understood?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
All
And
right.
just for clarification, in case it was not comprehended, if there's a secondary unit, if you can't hear me, walk this way so you guys can hear me. If there's another unit and you are walking around, you need to go around the entirety of all the cars.
Yep. Same thing applies.
His example was as if this car was not here. So, but
Correct.
if the car is there, you need to make sure that you are walking all the way around. You never want to get yourself pinned between the cars. Understood?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
sir.
Sky, can you get into the vehicle up there? I'm going to show you what probably would seem normal-ish, but ideally I don't want to see. Dispatch 130, 1038 on a black and color, vapid into something. Occupied once, northeast off of Fort Zancudo Approach Road by the barracks. License, registration, proof of insurance.
What? Can hear you.
I do not want those to be the first words out of your mouth. Okay? What we're looking for is personality, okay? Because if the only thing people are getting out of a traffic stop are the words license, registration, proof of insurance, right? They're immediately going to be standoffish, right? You approach. In my case, I'd be like, I'm Officer Rose, the Los Santos Police Department. How you doing today? And then you very quickly can determine based upon their response whether or not they're upset, whether or not they're going to be standoffish moving forward, whether or not, you know, they're going to be compliant. And you can sort of base it off there, whether or not, you know, it's sort of appropriate to go further. Oftentimes, I'll sit there and ask, you know, how's your day going? I'll even ask them, you know, do you know why I pulled you over? Just to sort of gauge whether or not they are willing to be compliant. Because if they are, for me, that's criteria for, like, you know, they're not being a complete scumbag. I'll cut them a break. Who had their hand up? What's up?
That's me, sir. Are we allowed to sort of get somewhat creative, but yet still say with the same formula? So are we allowed to walk up and be like, "G'day, mate. How's it going?"
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Absolutely.
conversate.
Y'all can sort of curate this to, like, what fits you best, right?
Yeah, to our personality.
Hell yeah.
Exactly. We don't want every single person to go up there and give the same spiel every single time,
Yeah,
right?
you
Every
don't want
single
us to be
person here is
robots.
exactly. That's what we don't want. At the same time, we don't want the traffic stop to solely be, hey, you were speeding, license, registration, here's your citation. Interact with these people. Ask people, you know, what were they doing before? Where are they headed? Or where were they before? Where are they headed to? If they were speeding, why were you in such a rush? You know, is something going on? There's nothing illegal. Now, here's the thing. They don't necessarily have to answer, right? But again, that plays into whether or not you as an officer, utilizing your officer discretion, are going to issue citations. You can cut people breaks. Now, I will say, during your cadet phase, if you're with an FTO, it's not ideal to cut people breaks, in that while we're evaluating you, it's sort of a little off-topic-ish, but while we're evaluating you, we want to see a situation from start to finish. We want to see you initiate the traffic stop. We want to see you do the paperwork associated with the citation. Make sure you get through the processing of the citation, the billing, all of that stuff from start to finish. So while you're with an FTO, make sure you're doing that. Because if you give everybody a warning, it almost seems like, you know, you want to do less work. Even if that's not the intent, it's harder to evaluate if we don't see everything from start to finish. Does that make
I have a
sense?
question.
Yeah, what's
Yes,
up?
sir.
So when we give a warning, we write a report about the warning. So that other people know?
So you can give a verbal warning. However, it is worth doing a written warning. Essentially, it would be sort of like a mock-up of an actual citation, except you would not label them as processed, and you would put the tag. It's like traffic citation warning, or something to that extent. That way,
So-
officers know, looking at their record, whether or not they've been given one in the past.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions so far? No questions? All right. Now, if you do approach the vehicle and the windows are up, obviously make sure, you know, tell them to put it down. You might run into some situations where people say their window's stuck, whatever the situation is. Ideally, you just want to
Or it's
ensure that you can...
raining, you know.
Yeah. Ideally, you just want to make sure that you are able to freely speak with them. And you are going to run into standoffish people that just don't want to talk to you at all. Trust me, been there, done that. But you, like, as you approach and you're initiating the conversation, you want to identify yourself. You will never identify yourself as a cadet, okay? You're going to identify yourself as an officer, specifically, you know, referencing the fact that you're a law enforcement officer, right? You're not going to be like, hey, I'm Cadet Thompson, Squealer, Parker. You're not going to do that. You're just going to identify yourself as Officer Squealer, Officer Thompson, right? And then you're just going to, you're going to go on with however you feel would be best for you. And that, you know, in my case, I'm Officer Rose, Los Santos Police Department. How you doing? Because again, I sort of pass the ball to them to see how they're going to respond to me, to see how I'm going to deal with them moving forward. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
100%.
Perfect. Once you've had sort of that back and forth, if the situation has allowed, at that point, you would ask for their identification card. And specifically, it has to be a physical identification card. So if y'all open up your phone right now and open up, let's see, details.
Documents and then license.
No, details. It's
Oh,
the eye at
gotcha.
the top left. You'll see licenses, and at the bottom right, it'll be like driver's license, and it should say valid. I would hope that all y'all have a valid driver's license, right?
Mine says suspended.
Oh, that's...
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's a joke.
I was gonna say that's problematic.
It's a joke.
Oftentimes you'll run into someone who says, well, on my phone it says I have a valid driver's license. And while that may be true, there is a specific citable offense for driving without proper identification, which is a physical and valid non-expired identification card. Right? So if you see 2023 on the expiration of the identification card provided to you, that is not valid. And one of the issues we were running into is when people were getting updated IDs, they were dropping their old expired ones. And during the grace period that we had, which I think was like 5 days, people were picking up those IDs and trying to use them in traffic stops and get somebody else in trouble. So just be very careful. Obviously, you know, if individuals have mugshots, you want to make sure you're comparing the person that you're speaking to the actual photo on the profile. Make sure you're not about to apply charges to somebody else. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there a charge for impersonating someone else, or
There
possession of
is.
stolen ID?
So if the ID is stolen, I believe there's a possession of stolen identification charge, or at least there was. There's also identity theft, I think is the specific one you'd be looking for, in which they would be getting somebody else. Let me see.
Yeah, identity theft.
Person secures an undeserved financial benefit from themselves or for themselves, cause the victim to suffer a loss, which could be financial, emotional, some other type of damage. Escapes criminal liability by using another person's name, birth date, or other identifying information. So that absolutely works. In addition, there's another nifty charge, which is, I believe, a misdemeanor. Oh no, it's a felony. Impersonation. Providing law enforcement with a false or fictitious name while under detainment or arrest. All right? To be clear, when somebody is pulled over, they are detained. All right? And anybody in that vehicle is also detained. That means passengers cannot just freely decide to leave because they weren't the driver of the vehicle. It's irrelevant that they weren't the driver. They were in the vehicle at the time it was pulled over. They stay in that vehicle. All right? Now, for whatever reason you want to allow a passenger to leave, it's not ideal, but you could. But again, if you start running into an issue with somebody who's, you know, being standoffish or whatever, and is like, no, I wasn't the driver, you can't do anything to me, they are detained. And then you give them the lawful order to get back into the car. If they fail to do so, you can sort of deal with it with an actual charge that could get them placed under arrest. Anyways, most of y'all are aware of how to utilize the MDT and look up profiles, correct?
Yes, sir.
Hey, friend.
Yes, sir.
All right. So once you obtain their identification, you can request that they hand the actual ID to you. They can do so through the window. However, it is not uncommon for officers to forget to give it back. So my recommendation, at least this is what I do, is I take out my notepad when they flash me their ID, and I write down all their information, all the relevant information, their full legal name, first, last, in addition to their state ID. That way, if they don't have a profile, it's something I can create quickly and on the fly. And when I return, it's just a matter of giving them the citation. A lot of times the reason officers forget to give the ID back is because they get caught up in conversation about the citation that they're issuing. That makes sense? So if you are
Yes, sir.
confident you're not going to forget to give it back, you can request it be handed to you. But if you feel it's better for you to write down that information instead, you can absolutely do that as well. So at that point, you would head back over to your vehicle. You know, you tell them you'll be back shortly, that they are to remain there, not leave. Run their information. And when you run their information, you're going to be looking for a few specific things. Number one, you're going to very quickly be able to determine if they have any warrants out for their arrest. It would show on their profile. You're going to be looking at the points on their profile. because once they exceed 20, so the moment they hit 21, their license is officially suspended, which means it is a misdemeanor for them to drive. If they are 20 or below, they're clear. You don't have to worry about that. Let's see here. You'd also want to search their name under incidents to see whether or not they have been issued any sort of warnings or prior citations, because that plays a massive role into whether I personally give somebody a citation. If I see somebody that has received 10 citations over the past week, truthfully, regardless of how compliant they were, the likelihood of them getting a warning is slim, right? Because it's obvious that somebody is clearly not learning if they've received that many citations over the course of a week. That makes sense? We all following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
I want to interrupt you just for 1 second. When it comes to like actually issuing someone like a verbal warning or a traffic warning or anything like that, you're not gonna tag their profile with traffic warning issue. We got a pandemic going around within the police department of people doing that, and we're trying to root out the problem. So what you're gonna do instead is you're gonna actually create the report as if you would be giving them the citation, and then tag that report with traffic citation issued.
Yep. It's quite simple. In fact, I'll put up a mock report or citation. 1 second.
Just to clarify, Sir Barrick. Barrick, sir.
Sorry, you talking
Yeah,
to me?
you said to not tag their profile with citation warning, and to create a report, and to tag citation given, or to put the citation warning, because you said given.
No. So he meant warning, not
He
not
meant
giving.
warning, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
All right.
I just wanted to clarify.
So if you take a look at incident number 2605, which I just put up, it should be titled Matt Rhodes third-degree speeding academy example. So let's say I was the one who got pulled over, right? Or I'm gonna pretend like I'm pulling over Matt Rhodes. In this case, what I would do is I would add criminal scum. I'd type in, if it's easier to do state ID, you can absolutely do that. If it's easier to type the name out, whatever is more fitting. At that point, you'd press edit charges. In this case, third-degree speeding. You'd select that, and then you would save. Right? If I was giving a warning, so once that charge is selected, you can click on Matt Rhodes, the name, and then you'll see total 1.0 months, $200 fine, and you'll have 3 checkable things underneath: warrant for arrest, processed, pled guilty. In citations, you'd never have to touch pled guilty or wanted for arrest. Processed is what sort of applies or indicates that you've actually either billed them or the citation is issued, and then that's what's going to reflect on their profile for charges that are on their record. So if we were giving a warning, we would not select processed. Everything would remain red instead of green. And under tags is where you would put traffic warning issued, or traffic warning issued. Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
In comparison to, hold on. In comparison to just traffic citation, which is opposite in color. The text is yellow and the background's black, versus the background being yellow and the text being black. You should be utilizing tags as frequently as possible. You've issued somebody a warning, you should tag the report, not the profile, that has happened. And the reason it's not ideal to do it on the profile is because what if that traffic warning was issued 6 months ago? Is it really necessary to be indicating it when you should be looking at the most recent incidents involving that person, right? To then see whether or not something happened within the past week, the past few days. It doesn't really matter the time frame. It's sort of whatever sits well with you. But, you know, I think 6 months would be well out of the area in which you'd be considering whether or not someone had recent activity. Another few things in regards to tags. There is a commercial traffic tag, and that should be specific to stuff like Group 6 and grime, towing. There's quite a few tags that you can sort of rope into the commercial traffic. I mean, hell, you probably could even do senior buns if someone's on one of the delivery bikes and driving like an absolute moron. My recommendation for you is always document the speed. Put that under evidence for, you know, the radar reading. But in addition to that, document the plate read so that it identifies who the registered owner of the vehicle is. 9 times out of 10, the person receiving the citation is the person who owns the vehicle. So having that all, right? Like if you have a plate that is a license plate 1234 registered to Matt Rhodes, and Matt Rhodes was issued a citation for third-degree speeding, and you have a radar reading of me doing 70 and a 55, that, I mean, if they take it to traffic court, which they can, you're clear. You have everything you need. There's no way they're going to be able to dispute that. But does anybody have any questions regarding that?
In regards to the tickets,
Yep.
do we ask them to sign it?
I do. I know that there are some officers that don't. I think it is very good habit to ensure that you have the individual's signature. And that's actually how I'll explain that process next. So once everything in the MDT is done, what you do, obviously, you know, you get out. If you are issuing a citation, grab your clipboard because you're going to have to hand it off to them if they are going to sign it. And I make it clear to them. You know, I'm going to be issuing a citation today on the basis of third-degree speeding. You know, you were clocked at 70 and a 55, which does qualify for third degree. And as a result, that's going to be 1 point on your license and a $300 citation. Now, what I want everyone to do is in the report 2605. You see where it says 1.0 months, $300 fine?
Yes, sir.
All right, I want everyone to hover over $300 fine. And you'll see when you hover over it, it says copy. If you click that, right? Click it. Then back out of your MDT. All right. Now, if you were to paste that in your MDT, I guess, as a command, it's sort of pre-filled. It's based on state ID, which obviously is attached to their profile, which is why it's important to make sure if you are creating a profile, you get it correct. Because if you don't, the wrong person could be billed moving forward. That makes sense? But
Yes,
do
sir.
all y'all realize what I'm saying regarding copying that and then pasting it?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm going to run you through, you know, if somebody were in the vehicle, this is how I would sort of conclude everything if I were issuing them a citation.
Oh, here, yeah.
Like us. Say those it.
All right. So what we're going to be doing today is I am going to be issuing you a citation today for third degree speeding, which is a $300 citation and a point on your license.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. It's not ideal, but, you know, you got to slow it down. I mean, you were on the upper end of third degree speeding, 1 more mile an hour, and that qualified for second, which is a
I got
$600
fast.
citation.
Gotta go fast.
No, you can't be going fast. You got to slow it down. Or you got to enjoy life. You can't be... Listen, pedal to the metal ain't it. Ain't it. It's not about... Listen, here's the reality. It's not about where you end up, right? It's all about the journey and how you got there.
Ain't no way you just used that line on me.
Mm-hmm. Sure did. Sure did.
Oh.
But here's the thing. I do need your signature right here along the bottom. Just as I remind everybody, it's not an admission of guilt. It's just indicating you... Thank you. Well, I'm going to tell you anyways. It's not an admission of guilt. It's just indicating you received the citation. And if you'd like, you can attempt to appeal this anytime in the next 30 days. All right.
Bye.
But beyond that, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns?
Cargo fast.
Okay. Well, listen, you'll be you'll be free to go once the back of my vehicle, my emergency lights are off. All right. You stay safe out there.
Bye. You too.
All right. Any questions regarding any of what just happened? Sterling.
In the event that the person refuses to sign the citation, what should we do?
So that's an interesting one, because at the end of the day, if you are issuing somebody a citation, the last thing you want is for them to get billed, show up to court, and tell a judge, "I don't even know why I got billed," and the judge is going to turn to you and be like, "Well, you sure it was the right person?" And you're gonna be like, "Yeah, it was the same dude in the traffic stop. What do you mean?" I can't see why somebody would not be required to sign a citation for the sole purpose of acknowledging that they've received it. And I 100% believe you'd be able to push a disobeying a peace officer charge on the basis of not signing.
I've been told if people don't sign the citation, they cannot contest it in traffic court.
So, but that presents a whole different issue, in that if their whole defense is I never received it, right? That presents a completely different issue of like they're not stating they, you know, that something. How do I word this? How do you simultaneously say I'm not signing it, and then show up to court and say it's not me, and then the judges say, well, if you didn't sign it, you can't dispute it. You know, like that logically wouldn't make sense. Judas?
I guess he would go just to a normal court and not traffic court,
Yeah, possibly.
and he would like bring to court the officer in question. And anyways,
Not to try to like be that guy, but let's say we told them it's a lawful order
Mm-hmm.
to sign the citation, and they say, "Well, what law is it?" Or like, "What are you referencing?"
Disobeying.
But if we're telling them it's a lawful order, we have we have some sort of case law or common law. Generally, like what I'm thinking.
What is that
like
music?
I hear that as well.
Like if I was to tell them to step out of the car and they refuse, that's a lawful order because
Right.
of Pennsylvania versus MEMS. But like if they were to ask for additional information on how is it a lawful order, like what would be the answer?
So there's technically no legislation specifically regarding that, but again, we sort of go back to the whole they need to at least acknowledge that they've received said citation. Because if they don't, how can we ever take them to court if they're never even acknowledging that they've received it?
can we get a verbal acknowledgement if they absolutely refuse to sign? Because then
I would say if they absolutely refuse, I'm gonna be real. The first time I ran into somebody who had this issue was a few days ago, and that was that 30+ minute traffic stop I was talking about. Until he contacted an attorney, and I made it clear if his signature was not on there, that I would be arresting him for disobeying, and he can attempt to appeal it if he deemed it necessary. His signature got put on there very quick. And I pull people over just about every single day. The likelihood of you running into that issue is it's not uncommon, but once you explain, like, listen, it's not you admitting any form of guilt. It's just you indicating you have received it. That is it. Most people sort of concede at that point and will sign. At the end of the day, if somebody is unwilling to sign, and it's really not that big of a deal, it's a minor citation, they're just having a bad day or whatever, I mean, ultimately it's going to come down to officer discretion. That's the reality. But your safest bet is to get a signature. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Squealer?
I was gonna ask, and it's kind of related to the documentation as well of the plate
Yep.
and the speed, but related to this as well. How do the judges take our statements into account? If I thoroughly document in the report at 02:59, Officer Squealer conducted a traffic stop, lawful traffic stop for X, Y, and Z, yada, yada, yada. When asked to sign, so-and-so said, and you quote them as like, I refuse, or whatever they say, is the judge not going to look at that and go, well, okay, and I can testify to that in court as long as I'm being honest? Same as the speed. If I see him going 78 and I'm not able to get photographic evidence of the reader, can I not put that in my statement and it still pulled up in court?
Oh my gosh. That was fast. You could. However, obviously, the more evidence and proof you have, the better. So if you did run into those situations, right, the person is sitting there appealing, just remember, testimony is evidence. Now, does it hold up as much as physical evidence? No. But there is a general understanding that a law enforcement officer isn't going to lie in court. So yes, you could technically indicate, and I tell people this all the time, listen, I don't technically need to clock you. Here's a little tricky bit. I clock everybody. Every person I'm pulling over is being clocked to some degree over the speed limit. But sometimes I may not tell them that. I may, as I'm approaching, be like, well, I saw you speeding. They go, well, what speed was I traveling? I was like, well, off the top of my head, I don't recall an exact speed, but you were definitely over 55. They're like, oh, definitely. So you didn't clock me? And then I sort of pivot and I'll hit them with that. The reality is I don't need to. I've been doing this long enough to know that you were over the speed limit. Then they go, well, I'm going to take you to traffic court. And I'm like, all right, bet. Them not realizing that I had the radar reading the entire time. And to be clear, you do not have a legal requirement to provide them the radar reading in the middle of a traffic stop. However, if they bring it to traffic court, you are required to turn over whatever evidence you do have, typically in the form of exporting the report itself and then giving them, emailing that to them so that they can see exactly what we have. You don't have to do it with judges because judges have access to the MDT and can see the report, but the other individual does not. All right. Any additional questions? What's up?
Would they need to FOIA it first? Like,
no, because it's similar to a bench trial. It's relatively informal, but you show up to court. If a judge is available, I'm not kidding. If you're available, they're available. They have an attorney if they're available and a judge. If all parties are available, traffic court could happen within a few minutes of a traffic stop. And then at the end, after issuing that, I sit back in my car, turn my lights off, and immediately just dispatch 130, latest 38 code 4, 130 10-8. That is it. So remember, you approach the traffic stop, you pull them over, dispatch 130 1038 northbound Fort Zancudo approach road to the black and color four-door sedan occupied once. You have your back and forth with them. Never do you want it to be a straightforward license, registration, proof of insurance. You were speeding, take the card, go back to your car, write the citation, approach them, issue it, leave. All right, you do that, you're going to be perceived as somebody who doesn't care about their job. You want to be personable. You want to have a solid back and forth. And you're going to run into people who aren't going to want to have that conversation with you. Okay, but at least give them the opportunity to engage in that back and forth. All right? Any questions? All right. I mean, I think we've covered just about everything traffic stop related for a normal traffic stop. Barrick, did we want to do more of a practical thing and having them conduct traffic stops? How do we want to do that?
Let's do that for the next 35 minutes. 35 minutes.
Did you show them a traffic stop?
So not necessarily from like absolute start to finish, but we could.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could.
Then we split them.
to have, but you just broke
Yeah, well,
down.
it was sort of, it was segmented,
Yeah,
instead of one continuous flow. All right, so I'm just gonna elaborate on what I'm doing here. So at this point, let's assume I clocked this vehicle doing 60 and a 55, right? I clocked it, I run the radar, and at this point, I've now taken a photo of both the radar reading indicating 60 and a 55, in addition to the registered owner of the vehicle. Dispatch 130, 1038, northbound Fort Zancudo Approach Road, black in color, four-door sedan, occupied ones.
11376. Dispatch 11323, 1038, northbound Vans, Fort Zancudo.
Hell, oh, you mind rolling that window down for me? Can y'all hear me from there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If y'all can't, just
There you
step a
go.
little closer. Hello, I'm Officer Rhodes, Los Santos Police Department. How are you?
Hello, Rhodes. I'm okay, I guess.
You guess what's going on?
Yeah. Well, you pulled me over.
Well, I mean, that's because you were speeding. You can't be doing that.
Mean, I don't think so.
You most certainly were. You
I was
absolutely were. Girl, the
definitely
radar
doing
don't lie.
55.
60 and a 55, that's
What?
5 over.
That doesn't sound like me at all.
But that sound well. I mean, I don't really think you go around saying, you know, 60 and a 55. But I can tell you, I saw you driving 60 and a 55. I got the radar
You
reading.
saw- Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I got the radar reading.
Oh.
That's why we're here. I know a lot of people think we give a 5-mile-an-hour leeway, but that's not the case. If 60 is above 55, that's illegal. You know what? Here's the reality. If the state believed it to have been safe, they would have made the speed limit 60 instead of 55.
Okay, you're just trying to meet your quota.
There ain't no quota. We have no quota, okay?
They don't.
But that being said, could I go ahead and see some license, registration, proof of insurance?
Here you go.
Perfect. Sky Faye. 1307. Perfect. It does look like you have a valid identification card, which is good. You know, we still be running into people who have expired ones. It's crazy.
In
Right.
February?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 2.5 months in and still expired IDs. Crazy. All right. Now, if you don't mind me asking, where are you coming from?
Said, Polito.
You're coming from Polito?
Yeah.
Okay. And where are you headed? In such a rush, might I add.
It's such a rush.
Yeah, over the speed limit.
Oh my. I was going to Harmony to get my car fixed.
Harmony. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Totally understand. Is there an open mechanic shop there now?
Yeah, there has been for a while.
Ooh, okay. I didn't know that. I see. Fortunately, I'm not up north very often,
Pretty
so.
hit and miss about being around, but there's some people there.
I'm pretty sure you done just explained every single mechanic shop, whether that be Mosley's, Popular.
Yeah, actually, you have a point.
Trust me, been there, done that. Been there, done that. All right. Scott, give me just a moment. I'm gonna go back to my vehicle, run your information. Just sit tight, and I'll be with you shortly. Okay.
All right.
And then specifically at this time, I would create a report, look up Sky Faye, check prior, incidents, see if there have been any warnings issued in the past, any recent traffic offenses. At that point, create a new incident. Sky Faye as the individual. Issue citation for third-degree speeding. Make sure I went ahead and copied everything. I think that's mostly it. Obviously, adding the evidence. Again, both the radar reading and the registered owner of the vehicle. Within the report, also very important, you want to state the location within the report itself. That way you can very easily elaborate on where you were and what the speed limit is. And then make sure I go ahead and copy that fine. Then I'd exit the vehicle with a clipboard because, like I said, I'm going to be passing it off to the driver here. All right, Sky. So again, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to be issuing you that citation today for third-degree speeding, which is 1 point on your license and a $300 citation, okay?
Oh
Yeah.
my.
Not the worst thing in the world, okay? But, I mean, if you think about it, yeah, I know. But just a heads up, you know, the speed limits, although they have changed, the threshold between the 3 different degrees of speeding has narrowed, all right? And so third-degree speeding, which is the least severe of the 3, is $300. Second degree is $600, but then first degree is $1,000. So, you know, it could be worse. It could be worse, but you do need to slow it down. All right? I'm going to go ahead and pass the clipboard over if you wouldn't mind. I am going to need the signature along the bottom. And as I state... Oh, perfect. Thank you. And as I state to everybody, again, it's not an admission of guilt. It's just indicating you've received it. And if you'd like, you can attempt to appeal it any time in the next 30 days. All right. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns, Sky?
I think I'm good.
All right. If that's the case, you're going to be free to go into the back of my vehicle, and my emergency lights are off. All right.
All right.
All right. You stay safe out there.
You too.
Dispatch 130, latest 38 code 4, 130 10-8.
113, same traffic.
Any questions from anyone? Any questions?
No,
sir.
Good.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Is there any point where it become a felony instead of a citation?
A felony would only happen in the event of... I actually have to check if it's reckless driving. Yeah, reckless driving is a felony. I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't a misdemeanor. So if somebody is speeding at high rates of speed through populated areas, driving into opposing lanes of travel or onto sidewalks, you could very easily justify a reckless driving charge. So yes, that possibility does exist.
All right. Thank you.
But hopefully I highlighted the importance of not making the traffic stop just a matter of, hey, give me your information, you were speeding, here's your citation, right? Because that traffic stop could have been over in all of 60 seconds, right? I approached, I had most of the information I needed available at the very beginning. If I was handed that ID and immediately walked back to my car, issued that citation, which would take all of 15 seconds. But that's not how we want the police department to be perceived. We want to engage in that back and forth. I can't stress that enough. You do not want to be, you know, someone who's just going to immediately jump to license, registration, proof of insurance. Here's your citation. Goodbye. No one wants to deal with that. That person could have had a really good day and, you know, sure, they were speeding and they shouldn't have been. But their perception of police as a whole goes down when officers act like that. All right. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So none of y'all got questions regarding traffic stops.
No, it was pretty clear.
Not at
I
the
did.
moment.
Perfect. Oh, wait. Well, I mean, anyone have a question now?
I may have one quick question.
Yeah, ask away.
At any point in time, is it okay, since we approach from the passenger side, is it okay to kind of, slide over from the passenger seat to the driver's seat?
You could, yeah. You absolutely could.
Okay.
I'm be real, in shift 3, a lot of times we don't necessarily have backup. So it's quite easy to, you're saying instead of going all the way around the vehicle to the driver's side, much
Correct,
like when I entered the passenger seat, just running the information. Yeah, 100% you could.
Okay.
All right. I think I think we've sort of concluded the, you know, how to do a traffic stop. Now let's get y'all on vehicles and have y'all do some mock traffic stops. Barrick, are we putting up reports for mock stuff or no?
No.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
Before we do that, though, let's go over like the high risk stop very briefly.
Okay.
Just for like 5 to 10 minutes, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We're gonna set it up properly.
I'll pull forward a little bit more.
Okay, I'm gonna need to take care of something. So if you wouldn't mind doing that. Also, I need to eat. I'm starving.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
That's fine.
Pat, my blood sugar's low.
Sky's gonna have a whole bunch of food as well, if anybody needs any.
I'm gonna eat my energy bars.
Water if you need.
Thank you.
Maybe a burger.
Welcome.
Be very helpful.
Burger. Okay.
John, you do it.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Don't mind me. I'm gonna sit in the back of a car. I'm just I'm snacking. All right, my blood sugar's low. All right, chat. I'll be right back. I gotta go grab something to eat.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about high risk stops. We're gonna make it pretty quick and simple. You guys should be able to see the high risk stops on 32 of the SOPs. Most important, obviously we talked about that high risk stops have primary radio traffic. You won't break high risk stops with the exception of 78s. For anything that I
Are we using the CVPI as the
Yeah.
car we're stopping? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, if you, for example, if you're following a vehicle and the vehicle is flagged 1060, which is essentially the vehicle stolen or was reported stolen in some way, carjacking, you're going to not always perform a high risk stop. However, you can. It all just depends. Sometimes people don't realize that their vehicle is been reported stolen. So let's say, for example, you have a 1060 vehicle fleeing from an area that you received a 1034 or 71s, gunshots or drug sales. Those are ones that you could probably push forward for a high risk stop, but you don't always have to.
Yeah. I would like to heavily touch on that. You don't always have to. You'll run into kind of like a mental thing very often within the shop where not proper or way to go. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And you should approach pretty much every situation that way. You need to take everything differently and ask, like, what does this situation call for very specifically? Because very much like Rhodes was talking about, where, you could equivalently walk up to a traffic stop, introduce yourself, tell them what they did wrong, ask for their ID, then walk back to your car, pretty much with minimal information. Imagine within that, like, threshold of force that we talked about. If you just, just for a stolen car, like somebody could, equivocally just be joyriding. If you decide to do a high-risk stop on them instantly, without ever, like, speaking to them or anything like that, and, it could literally just be that they were joyriding, which is like a misdemeanor, like $700, $900 charge, whatever it might be. We're essentially, without any communication at all, going to that highest level of force. Like having lethal weapons trained on them, and we're skipping everything else that comes before that. When in reality, you could have just gone up to them, talked to them, tell them about the situation, and they would have just complied and gotten out of the vehicle, and then you can make a judgment call whether you want to let them go with, like, a warning or a citation of letting them walk, or what you want to do there. I just highly, 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 highly stress that please do this when it's necessary. Not because you can, but when it's actually necessary.